Welcome to the Martin E. Segal Theater Center here at the Graduate Center CUNY, and to Prelude 21, Start Making Sense. It is our annual theater and performance festival celebrating the work of New York theater artists and ensembles, and it's hard enough in normal times to create work for the stage and for spaces inside and outside, but in the time of Corona we all are faced with exceptional challenges, and we are here to celebrate again the extraordinary achievements that come out of the New York theater community. It is time, I think, and we feel, to start making sense, to ask questions. Why are we making theater? But also, how are we producing it, and for whom? And this is a great investigation again into the mechanics of making art in New York City. And we also invited theater ensembles from around the US, from Detroit and Cincinnati, St. Louis and Philadelphia, New Orleans, to join us. And this will be an extraordinary look into what is on the minds of artists right now. We also have many panel discussions. We have an award which we're giving out to honor outstanding members of the New York theater community. So I would like to all of you to join in and get an insight of what is happening. Welcome, everybody, back here at Prelude at the Martin E. Segal Theater Center at the Graduate Center CUNY in Midtown Manhattan. It's a great day on planet Earth because it's day 3 of Prelude, and we have with us curators and artists from one of our chains, like Chain 3. We created something new, we experimented and had the idea of chain creation. And actually, Jay Wegman was the one who said that would be something to do. And he here is with us. And let's ask one curator to create one artist, and then the curator selects another curator. So we distribute power, that we invite, we leave, in the sense of a John Cage, a possibility for chance out there. And I think it proved to be extraordinarily interesting. So really, in a sense, perhaps by default, as a diverse crowd of artists and curators. And I think it's a fantastic, beautiful, and inspiring mosaic or kaleidoscope of New York work. Of course, there are many, many other great artists, but this is now who we have. This is where curators thought we should listen to these artists, and we should listen also to the suggestions of these curators. So I think it's a fantastic a little festival, a tiny one, a little homeopathic pill into the gigantic body of that big theater we are all faced with. That great German writer Peter Sonde, he wrote about theater, said theater is like Heracles who is chained on a rock, and the eagles are coming and eating out the liver, and he's or Prometheus, here they are changed, and Heracles came to liberate him, and a theater has to get out. It has to take away the chains and the things that the out of that rock and become free again. And I think this is a little attempt to do that. So we have with us Jesse today, Jay, Isaac, Alessandra, Lumi, Sibyl, and Alex. It's a great honor to have you with us, that you take your time, your energy to be with us, to share your experiences in this truly complicated time. And it's a great honor. It's all about listening, and I hope I will shut up and not talk too much. First, I do want to acknowledge the land we are on. It's important to us. We actually have a panel on Indigenous New York theater today at 4:30. Ryan Opalaniatat, one of our graduate students, he also will lead the panel. But I would like to acknowledge the Lenape people upon whose land we are gathered today, and yes, also the airwaves that coming out of here. And we do pay respect to the Lenape people and ancestors, past, present, and future. So that is important to us. So I'm going to ask everybody to say where they are and give it a little short introduction. Not everybody knows everybody. I'm often finding out of a work of artists I haven't heard of, and at least we take pride of looking at the scene, and we do not know. And so this is a great way to discover. So Jesse, maybe we'll start with you, or we go clockwise on the Zoom screen.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Jesse Firestone. I'm an interdisciplinary curator. I've worked in a range of institutions from like really grody DIY spaces to sort of new, cleaner, large civic institutions. And right now I work on the curatorial team at a cultural center and garden in the Bronx called Wave Hill. I'm having a bit of that moment in Wayne's World where they meet Alice Cooper and they're like, we're not worthy, because this panel is really amazing. And I'm just so glad to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you. Isaac, can they say a little bit?
Yeah, I'm Isaac Cole. I'm an interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary artist, often trying on new disciplines to kind of like follow fun problems that are there. I'm really excited to be here. I'll echo Jesse with everyone today. Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn, Lenape-Hoking land. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Alessandra.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be holding space with you all. I'm very excited to be on this panel. Alessandra Gómez. I am calling in from Brooklyn on Lenape land. I'm a writer and also an interdisciplinary curator with a focus on commissioning new work. I currently work at The Shed, which is a fairly new arts institution that opened in April of 2019. We weren't even open a year before the pandemic and shutdowns happened. But our focus is really on commissioning and presenting a wide range of work, from visual arts to music to dance and sort of everything in between. So I work on the visual arts team, but also work across performance on a lot of live projects in our other theatrical spaces.
Thank you. Thank you. Lumi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lumi Tan. Very excited to be here with all of you. I am a senior curator at the Kitchen, where I am currently. So you might hear some doorbells ringing or some sound checks for Alex's performances later tonight. But I curate both exhibitions and performances of all types with, I don't know if I have a focus actually, but I do a lot of commissioning, as well as, you know, kind of straddling that curator producer role. So excited to talk with all of you.
Thank you. And Alex, they will perform tonight. We will see it, you know, at 7 p.m. if you go to our preludenyc.org site. So Alex.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Tatarsky. It's so fun to be here. I'm backstage at the Kitchen at the moment, so feeling a lot of the delightful pre-show panic, which is the reason that we all do what we do. So just soaking up those adrenaline vibes and yeah, excited to dive into what everyone is thinking about and feeling in this very peculiar moment. Yeah, I'm in residence here at the Kitchen, and this will be my first kind of peek into the process. So it's nice that it coincides with Prelude.
Yeah, so created for Prelude.
Frank? What are we going to do if we lose Frank?
I mean, he looks great.
He's frozen in a good moment, but...
Yes, frozen nonetheless.
Frank! I think I was maybe next. Should I just go and then hopefully he'll come back? Okay. It is a great honor.
Wait 1 second.
Frank, we lost you.
If you can hear me, say hello. Your sound is a little... Yeah?
Frank, we can't hear you that well.
Okay. So let's wait a moment.
Okay. And you're still frozen.
Yeah.
This is so intense. Okay. Thank you, Tanvi. My name is Sybil Kempson. I'm so excited to be here with you all. Some of you I know, and some of you are new to me, and I'm really excited to talk with you. I'm StreamYarding in from Newburgh, New York, in the Hudson River Valley. It's Munsee Lenape territory and also Mohican territory. And I'm originally from Lenni Lenape territory in northern New Jersey. And I lived also in Brooklyn and Queens and Manhattan for many years. So almost my whole life I've been on Lenape territory, and it's a wonderful part. It's wonderful land. So I'm very happy to be alive and to be here with you all and to have a talk today.
And I guess I'll go, right? Jay Wegman, I am the director of the NYU Skirball Center for the Performing Arts. I am StreamYarding in live from my office at NYU. Normally, I would have a mask on, but my door is shut, so my staff is safe from me. I have been doing this role for about 5 years. Before that, I was at Abrams for about 10 years, and I guess I'm a curator. Mark Russell, who many of us know, he says he's not a curator, he's a presenter or a programmer, and I'm like, well, I'll honor any of those. So, but I like to work across theater, dance, and any of those combinations, or even the new whacked out stuff, like Sybyl's doing. So that's me. Sibyl, since we're still waiting for Frank, why don't you talk about your show?
Oh, I thought you wanted me to do some of my impressions.
Oh, do that. Do whatever you want.
Okay, well, I am on. So there's okay. I should say that I'm mostly a playwright, and then I started out as a performer, and I felt dissatisfied, so I started writing plays, and then my plays were maybe a little too crazy, and I was having trouble convincing anybody to do them, and then when I did convince them, I had trouble behaving myself in the rehearsal room. I was becoming a control freak, and so I came to the conclusion I need to start my own company, even though. Oh, okay. Maybe okay, I'll just finish real quick. So the piece that I'm doing is, it's called The Securely Conferred Vouchsafed Keepsakes of Mary S. And it's the second part of a diptych. And the first of that diptych was Sasquatch Rituals, which Lumi brought to the kitchen in 2018, which was a fantastic experience. And now the second part of it's a play, and it was supposed to happen at Abrams in the Playhouse, and then the pandemic came, and then so it ended up it's like a video now, but it's almost like it's photography too. So I don't know how to explain it. I don't know what it is really yet. So hopefully showing a little piece of it here at Prelude maybe y'all can give me some feedback when you see it. But it's going to screen at the Chocolate Factory, who co-commissioned it on Halloween, Sunday night. And then it will stream from Abrams, who is also co-commissioned it, from November 4th to December 22nd. And it's actually the first half of it because it was time consuming, and I didn't manage to finish the whole thing. So I'll show the rest of it next year. So thank you, Jay. So now Tanvi says she wants the curators to speak. Yes.
Very good. So I'm back. I don't know if I couldn't see you, but maybe you were on all time and it was just me. I think Jay I don't know if he went to you. I wanted to ask you also, speak a little bit about the chain curation and tell also a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, I did talk a little bit about me, but I just need to say that, do you remember an awful movie called Airport 1975? And Karen Black was a stewardess on it, and somehow the pilot disappeared, so she had to take over the plane. So I kind of felt when you got frozen and then you left, I was like, oh my God, we're
No.
on it's Airport 75 all over again.
Oh, good, good. I thought everybody got lost, but that's good. It was just me. Good.
Yeah, no. So the chain curation idea, I don't know when I first heard about chain curation, but I love it. It's a wonderful way to share power, to also encounter things that people would like. You had alluded to that earlier, because of the way the festival unfolded this year. You're going to experience things that you typically wouldn't have. I mean, that's certainly true for me. So I just, I've been toying with the idea of doing that at Skirball. Skirball is always, we're so embedded in a university that we're not all that independent. So, and like we still aren't even back in the theater yet, quite honestly. But so the chain curation thing is something I'd like to try here down the road. It's risky, but the risk is the exciting part, I think. So that's really all I have to say about that.
Mm. Yeah, no, really, thank you. It was a great to get that push also from you to do it, and we have asked artists to take risks and curators, everybody, but also we as presenters in the way we should do it. I would like to ask all of you, and we can go around. How is this moment? How are you experiencing this moment? Which is in Germany we say it's not nicht Fisch, nicht Fleisch. It's not fish. It's not meat. It's something in between. How do you all feel, and how do you make sense out of your work? Maybe Isaac, they start.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting because the project that I'm sharing was started before the pandemic, but it was already all about isolation, and sort of about this very private, individual world of dreaming. So when the pandemic happened, it sort of really deepened those questions and those thoughts. And I was actually really fortunate to get more opportunities during the pandemic. I had a few residencies, so I was working pretty intensely, but without any collaborators, without performers to talk with. So I kind of turned the project into a sculptural project for a few months. And started doing a lot of researching and writing and working on the soundtrack. So I kind of had to morph the way that I was working and thinking for a while, and made a lot of discoveries along the way. And it was actually a really rich experience, which I know is probably irresponsible for me to say. But I think the pandemic made me realize also that it's really important to take time to work more slowly and to sort of push for that wherever possible. And to kind of embrace the idea of taking longer than you might think you need, and trying to push up against the pressure to overproduce, I think. So in many ways, it was a really, really powerful learning moment for me.
Anybody just chime in? Alex, maybe?
Yeah. I feel like I learned so much from the experience of not having to work and getting money from the government. And that changed my entire practice and relationship to labor in a way that I'm still processing. And also witnessing and participating in uprisings and revolt and the possibility of community mutual aid and rent strikes in this way that I think for a lot of us, we didn't feel that we had time and energy to do. And that was really striking to me. When you are better rested and you're eating several times a day and you don't have an anxiety about where the next paycheck is coming from, you discover what you care about, which in my case is soil science and organizing redistribution of resources, which like was this total discovery, actually, I must say, because I never in my life had experienced this sense of actually amidst crisis kind of financial stability for the first time. So I'm just thinking about that so much, and I have this real bunch of like ugly feelings that come up when I revisit work made in the before times, because it comes out of such a feeling of intense stress and overwhelm. So part of the time at the kitchen, which is called Untitled Freak Out, Tell Me What to Do, is like, how can we rethink our relationship to work, but like actually genuinely do that? And can that happen within the structures that we have? And I'm finding like a lot of resistance in myself to even attempting what I said I was going to attempt, which is try to work differently. So it's really fascinating. And then of course, like all these images and things are coming up out of that, like unemployed court jesters. And so I'm just like following the impulses with these questions in mind. And like totally what you said really resonates, like letting things take a really long time and trying to not have this like shame around lack of product really makes me aware like the extent to which the way we make theater is really product oriented. And what does that mean, just to be like always thinking about selling a finished thing, and what does that not allow to happen? So yeah, I'm very excited and like freaked out by these questions and whether or not it's possible to make like substantive changes in myself and how we do things structurally.
Yeah, as someone said, there will be BC and AC, like before Corona and after Corona. Sibyl, you were on a long Segal talk, but still, what are your thoughts at the moment? How do you feel?
All right, I'm going to try not to start crying on this one. In the Segal talk, I was telling Jay, I was so embarrassed. I just started crying. I was talking about love, and I just couldn't keep it together.
Well, it was serious and profound. Yeah.
Thanks, Frank. So I'm absolutely relating 100%. For me, it was about having enough solitude for the first time since childhood. I have a younger half brother and half sister, and they're way younger. So I have the mentality of an only child, and when you're working in theater, it's very communal and community oriented, and I found this way of working that I didn't know what I was doing, and but I had time and space to figure it out, and I really made a point of observing that thing of oh my God, how am I going to finish this on time? And we had to keep pushing the deadline back because I was basically ended up doing like almost animation kind of, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was really excited about it, but it just was so time consuming. And I was all by myself figuring out these kind of like staging problems. Not all by myself. There were a bunch of us working on it, but when it came down to putting it together, there was a lot of figuring out. I was just working on iMovie, which I don't even know really what I'm doing on iMovie. And so at a certain point, I shifted the way I was thinking about it. And because I was getting really bad anxiety, I was putting on all this weight. I was getting high blood pressure. I had to go like get a blood pressure monitor because I was so stressed out. And then I was like, wait a minute. There's no room for this kind of stress right now. There's plenty of other stuff to be stressed about. So I shifted what I was saying to myself, which was just like, let me see how much of this I can get done. Let me see how much I can get done. So it became more exploratory, and the whole year and a half has just so much been about learning anyway. So I said, let me just keep myself in that learning space, and let me each day get up and see how much I can get done. And that completely changed the way that I was invested in it. And I really don't think that I would have even gotten as far as I got, even halfway through, if I had kept that former mentality of like panic. Yeah. That I realized I have been operating under since 1995, really, ever since I started making work in the world, and then before that in school. So that it was a big deal. And now with everything starting back up again, it's like wait. Like we learned a lot, right? Like we're not gonna readjust at all for that. So that's the new space of navigation for me. It's like, oh no, like come on, wait. But we learned so much. We found so much, didn't we?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I am.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. To our curators, you are curators, which are in a way also dramaturgs, or we talked about it yesterday with Bonnie Maranka and Katani, you're like editors, you put things together, you collage, you point with your finger to things, to the text, almost like in a synagogue or whatever, but you don't touch it. But what is different now? What has something changed, or what are you thinking about at this moment when you are, as Jay said, we don't really know, haven't really opened yet, but you will after a time of closure? Any one of you who wants to start? Alessandra, maybe.
Sure, I can start. I mean, for me at least, I wish I could say that things have slowed down. I think on the curatorial side, sort of curating, producing work, working with artists, it's been really complicated to be able to produce and present work safely, sort of with this other layer of administration around COVID protocols and making sure that it's safe for audiences and for performers. So just thinking through like rehearsals and tech and then the actual performance. So I think we've had to adapt new ways of working together, both within an institution with various departments and then also with artists. And I think the silver lining, at least for me, is that there's this real heightened sense of care. And in my own curatorial practice, I really try to bring care and empathy into the work that I do. But I often have started finding myself opening conversations with artists saying like, how are you feeling? How can I support you? What do you need in this moment? And I think, the past 2 years has been really rough for the cultural landscape and for artists. And so that's something that I've been trying to sort of do in my own curatorial practice, like enter everything sort of with care and empathy. And I think another great thing that has come out of the pandemic is that institutions right now, I think, are looking a lot more towards collaboration. And that really excites me, sort of pulling together resources, thinking about co-commissioning as part of the season, collaboration becoming really embedded in the future of programming, which is something that really excited me about this idea of chain curation, like the collective sort of coming together and bringing together different voices and artists. And sort of an example of that also is, the Shed, we're hosting Bushwick Star for a month-long residency in our spaces. And I think we have this commitment to collaborating with local organizations. And so, it's something that I hope we continue, and I hope to see it more across the field in general.
Yeah. Lumi?
I think I can take my mask off as I talk. There's a lot of, well, actually, no, never mind. A lot of traffic in this office. So I would agree with Alessandra in terms of the kind of inability to slow down, because there are just so many more things to think about now. And I think that the kind of qualities of like the emotional labor that, as curators, we always put into the work has really been forefronted during this process. And I think that's been really a great, it's been a learning process as well. So I think that like this is a time when, we all are hopefully just very generous with each other in a way that we couldn't feel previously, because as Alex and Sibyl and Isaac have all mentioned, we were just rushing towards that next product, the next opening, the next grant application, whatever. And, I think just having time to like understand where those kinds of limitations are both within ourselves and within our institutions has been really crucial. And even like at the kitchen, we're doing like much less programming that we had done previously. We are extending the periods where we worked with, how we work with artists in terms of kind of these like residency projects versus like, just having artists in for a week or a night or, all these things, all these different kind of timelines. So it's been, I think, a really great moment where all these things have like coincided, but it also still presents many challenges. So I think it's like, I don't know if there's going to be a before and after, to be totally honest. I think it's going to be much more of like an up and down wave of like trying to, like I think as Sibyl said, carry on these lessons that we've taken with us, and then like just kind of checking ourselves through this time, being like, is this what we really need to do? And like just as much as we all want that kind of like normalcy, just to like really take some time to be like, why was that normal in the first place?
Jay, how do you feel? How's it?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, so Skirball is embedded in a much larger institution, and whose primary purpose is not Skirball. So the COVID tide, as I call it, was called for us. We NYU had us furlough 14 of the 18 staff members, which was truly one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And then the remnant, there were 4 of us total during COVID, from January to roughly March, trying to reinvent ourselves. We didn't jump on that wagon where people were streaming performances just because we didn't have the resources, but we did pivot to really increase our humanities offerings. So we were doing talks and things like that. And then in May, staff started to come back. But the protocols are such that we have not been able to open up everything to outsiders. We're doing things internally for NYU because they can totally track daily the folks who are in the building. Like every day I get up, I have to fill out something called I don't even know what it's called, but I have to show a pass every day that's dated, and all of that. And we still don't know for sure that we're going to have a spring season. I mean, we have planned it, and that was rather arduous because most of the curators here had things lined up, and then that all went away, or did it just go on pause, or did it so I wasn't really doing my curatorial role during COVID because I really had no agency. And I guess agency was taken away from a lot of us because we just didn't know what was going on and what we could do. But so we're hoping to open in February through May with we're bringing 7 different productions in, or 7 different shows. But like I said, it could not happen. And I guess that's something we're all dealing with. I mean, if I learned anything in COVID, is like I knew nothing. From day to day, from hour to hour, things change all the time. So it became kind of almost zen. Like I was in the moment and wanted to be elsewhere. But it's also gonna, the truth of the matter is too, COVID made me rethink the climate. And Scribble does a lot of international programming. So are we going to continue to bring artists here? It's a huge, complex question. And there's also not much touring for artists anymore in the United States. especially international ones, unless you're somebody, you know, I mean, I don't know who really gets a lot of tours. So the folks we bring in are really kind of not brand names who are going to then go have a season throughout the United States touring. So that's one thing I'm thinking about. The commissioning thing is easy for us, and totally the co-commissioning thing. A lot of people have reached out to us to ask us if we want to participate in commission artists. I'm like, I love cooperation. I think that's also why I like the chain curation idea, is you're actually working with other people. So commissioning, the climate, uh, uh, realizing how much I actually cared for the staff here, especially when they were full, and also just not knowing, planning, hoping February happens, but not knowing if it will be done.
Yeah. Thank you, Jesse. How is that for you? Are you based at Wave Hill in the Bronx? Is your office then there? Is it, or you work from home? How do you experience the moment? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I work primarily on site, and we've been on site since July of 2020. So because we have a large outdoor space, we were able to open up quite early. And I think that has also influenced the way our programming team and our institution as a whole sort of sees itself and has responded. And on a personal note, I know for me, and it sounds like for many of us, the beginnings of the pandemic were quite a rough landing. Sort of being like torn from the comfort of familiarity. And it was quite painful, but also opened up what I see as kind of a portal into another way of operating. And I really used that moment for myself to like do some personal work, but also then extend that into my own curatorial practice, where I dove really hard into accessibility online, or thinking about sort of transparency with artists in terms of timeline. And sort of, I remember there were these opening emails we were all sending around, like, I hope you're safe, I hope you're well, I hope like everybody in your network and in your consciousness is also well. And I've noticed that that sentiment has been lost in some places, but also in one-on-one interactions with artists or curators who I encounter, we've really kind of been holding that still. And I think that giving space for that, and sort of the fluxes of emotion that come when you ask those questions, is partly why I was so interested in Isaac's work, because Isaac was teasing out this yo-yoing that I think many of us have felt and been kind of articulating over the last year and a half. And right now I feel this intense tension between like the world I saw possible and then the integration into the world that is now, and where that world wants to be going back, in some places moving forward. And so I'm trying to find the moments in my own small way where I can still amplify those ripples of what I want. And what that looks like for me is building out, and I think Lumi spoke to this, building out larger project timelines where I can start engaging with an artist earlier on and be able to give that space to go through whatever emotions they need to go through, or being even more transparent in project timelines and sort of maybe institutional idiosyncrasies. And I've found that has been really helpful for me as someone who has to work between both an institution that I love and institutions that I love and have complicated relationships with, and artists that I love that I want to have relationships with these institutions. And so it's a lot of this sort of, I feel like I'm juggling balls that don't exist, right? These balls of emotion or psychic energy or things like that in the work in a way that I wasn't necessarily before.
Yeah, it is certainly a time of upheaval, of disruption, and maybe not just modification. Someone said, the inventor, some like Steve Jobs with the iPhone, he disrupted an industry, and others then the Google phone that adapted it. So the question is, what moment are we in now? Is it a mixture of both? And I would like to ask you all, what do you all think? What do we really need now? What is urgent? What is meaningful? How should theater performance look like? What should be presented? Maybe examples you like, but also from you, what you feel, what does this city need? People say states have the democracy they deserve. So I'm saying, countries or state have the theater they deserve. But what would work for New York City? What is important? What do you feel has to be done that might also or should be different? Anybody, it's open mic.
Well,
I'll go.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, Alex.
Yeah, I guess to return to some of the things that I was saying before, the question now is so enmeshed for me with economic needs and structural needs. So, like for instance, I don't think that in a place like New York City, the theater institutions can fully be responsible for offering what artists actually need to make work. And so there's kind of this like confusion of sorts where arts institutions are maybe expected to provide things that they actually can't, because what artists need is cheaper rent. And I think about that a lot in terms of the history of New York City and just the squeezing out of like spontaneity and possibility of long periods of experimentation that are really only possible when you have cheap space. And so I've increasingly been thinking like what I want to advocate for as an artist is like commitment to the redistribution of space, not just for working, but for living, because arts institutions can offer space for rehearsal, which is incredible. And I think like all spaces should be open for rehearsal, including like empty bank vestibules just taking up valuable real estate. Like I really mean that. I think people should be able to have their dance rehearsals in these empty glass cubes, But furthermore, like we need places to live that are affordable and that make a different kind of thinking, like slow, deep, complex thinking possible. And so just seeing New York City specifically kind of empty out as the rich people went to their estates and the businesses closed, it was just sort of this embodied sense of horror walking around. Like there is the space, there are the resources, and that shouldn't be on arts institutions to provide. It should be really on governments and on how we think about resources and how we think about what we deserve, and the kind of horrifying iniquity of hoarding empty space. So yeah, that's one thing I've been thinking through.
I sort of feel like it would be nice to see the real estate industry like put some support into the arts more, because the whole city has been gentrified to the point where like I had to move an hour and a half north just to be able to like live. And the artists are the ones that go into and start that process of pushing, and then until they are pushed out. And so that would be nice to see some I don't know, similar, like someone was saying at New Dramatists a couple of years ago, like I think it was one of the guys from Cornerstone Theater Company, and they're LA based, how the television industry like goes in and harvests playwrights and then doesn't do anything to sort of return the favor or to plant seeds. And so there's, to kick artists out or to push artists out or to offer so little support on the business side. Like I'm not even talking about arts institutions, but the other industries that profit off of arts and culture in New York and all cities. How about if they could start kicking in? Because artists need support. We need places to live, and we need financial support more than it's not sustainable. And that in looking back to pre-pandemic times, it wasn't sustainable the way I was doing it. So I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like from here, but that would be so great to see some of the industries that profit so much off of artwork to really give back in a way that's not so much about policy or gatekeeping even, but just giving support and just having faith that we're gonna know what to do with that support.
I think about a middle ground between how that can happen, and I think I think about Ellen Baxter a lot. Do you all know this name? She was an activist in the 70s who started the Broadway Housing Committee and ended up suing the city of New York to kind of ban single room occupancy. And through that, started and got funding from the city of New York to create affordable housing through this Broadway Housing Committee, which Sugar Hill is one of the projects part of this housing group. And I come to this middle point between, I guess, Alex and Sibyl here, because, like, yes, the government needs to do it. No, I don't think the government or real estate will do it benevolent, whatever that word is, benevolently, right? I think there's a level of force that has to happen. And so I am starting to look at these strategies of where, like, lawsuits, crafty doings can maybe result in some middle form of policy that's not quite government, that's not quite amorphous, but something that does create a middle ground where these two spaces start to create some fruitful change. But that also took like 11 years with like Ellen and like 2 volunteer lawyers who were suing a city. And that has resulted in maybe like 6 housing complexes. So I don't know where that gets scaled up, but I think those types of antagonisms with our policymakers and sort of the institutions at large kind of need to start happening, because I think, as Alex said, like, institutions feel responsible, or some falsely feel responsible, to change it all when they can't. And I think that actually ends up watering down an institution's ability to do meaningful work, because if they're spread so wide in one way, it limits the engagement or actual depth of contact in other ways.
Yeah, I find that example you offer of Baxter really helpful. Like, work can operate in different spheres and different modes. Like, neither the arts institution nor the artist, I think, has to do it all, and it doesn't all have to go into the piece. You know what I mean? So to respond to your question, Frank, in terms of like what kind of work we desire to see, it's not like I necessarily need to see the activism around housing on stage, although I would be delighted to, but I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm saying, like, I want to see the totally unbounded, experimental, joyous, embodied, deep, complex, strange work that might emerge from the circumstances of having time and space to live. So I'm excited by the fact that I don't know what that could look like, because we haven't had that circumstance in New York for several decades now.
I'll jump in. For the type of work that I would like to see, I've discovered this week isn't really what other people want to see, which doesn't really surprise me. And I'm talking specifically about like Tina Satter's show, which is fabulous. I hope everyone here has seen. Well, Lumi certainly has, but you know, it's closing. It's closing early, and I'm like,
Prelude artist, by the way. She was at Prelude, you know, so a couple of times, yeah.
So so I was thrilled when that show and Tina and all those wonderful actors made it to Broadway. and maybe they've been running a month or something like that. And to read in the paper on Monday or whenever was heartbreaking to me that it was closing November 14th. So I was like, please, I hope those Tony voters get to see it, because it really deserves to be seen, as does Dana H. I actually hadn't seen that until just last week. These are wonderful works, and they are from colleagues of ours in the downtown scene. And it's like, all right, well, Broadway doesn't want this. I guess they want Jagged Little Pill or any of that stuff. And so, if anything, it makes me want to even embrace work like that even more. The problem with Skirball is it's so large. You know, it's 800 seats. So, and I'm fine with reimagining the use of the space, but we can't make a home for everything because of the scale. But I somehow would love to get Skirball involved more so in sustaining experimental local work. So that's the type of work I would like to see.
Maybe I'll just follow Jay, since you know, Tina's show premiered at the Kitchen, which is 155 seats, a 2-week run, and then went to the Vineyard, which is like kind of similarly scaled theater off Broadway, and then went to Broadway. And you know, I was so like, made sure like everyone was so thrilled when Is This Room made it to Broadway, and just thinking about just the like, you know, the idea that like in one night at this Broadway theater, you know, the amount of people who were exposed to Reality Winner's Story was like the same as like the entire run at the Kitchen. But then, you know, of course, then you're exactly as Jay said, you're like butting up against like that, the idea of these different publics and like what these publics actually like want and desire, and like, you know, thinking about like, you know, maybe this play could have run at the Kitchen for like 3 months without any interruption, and like just have a completely different tension, and you know, kind of like understanding of like what is happening on stage. But you know, I think that like something that's been really helpful here to kind of like, you know, help us understand like what, I don't know if it's like what we want to see, but like, you know, coupling what we want to see with like, you know, helping artists transition through this stage is just like this this idea of like getting away from box office in general, you know, like just the idea that we had free programming during COVID. We had Sophia Cleary's show in September, which was just for one person at a time. Sophia did, I think, 8 performances. So the total run was, you know, I mean, the total kind of like box office was like 8. But like without sacrificing like any of the kind of like theatrical aspects of the work, or the production aspects of the work. And then, you know, like now finding this kind of balance with, you know, Alex's shows are 30 people in the gallery, which is half capacity, and like what, you know, what can be achieved through these like, you know, different types of audience experiences. And you know, just kind of again like moving, as thrilling as it is to have like a piece go to Broadway, like moving away from, you know, like all those things that define success in that traditional sense.
Yeah.
I can jump in here too. Alex, I so appreciate what you said and have just been thinking about it for these past few minutes, just about this idea of separating the artist from the work. And like, I think there's what the artist needs from the institution to be able to make the work. And then there's what an artist needs to be able to live and thrive in New York City. And that includes like housing, foods, that all of those things that sort of relate back to security. And I mean, for me, those issues are so vast and micro, and I grapple with how to tackle that. I think working with an institution, it could sort of be done on a micro scale. And I think from the pandemic, like I'm okay with incremental change. And I've been thinking a lot about changing infrastructure too, like, you know, the artists that we work with, if someone is making work about climate change or a climate emergency, like how can we also embody that within the institution? So like, what does a carbon neutral performance or exhibition look like? Do we really need to be building existing walls and spending money and creating all of this additional waste? Can we be working with local fabricators or performers? So I've been thinking, I think the work I want to see needs to be reflected also back into the institution, into our own practices. So like if an artist is making work about, you know, sustainability, like how can we take that inwards a bit more? And I know that's quite broad, but I've just been trying to think about that with the future programming that we have and in my own curatorial practice. So really appreciate that you said that and shared that piece about artists versus the work and, you know, how that's reflected back.
Yeah. And maybe one question, you're next to, of course, the difficulties, the financial one, the private ways of living, of existing or caring, as someone said yesterday about my parents or grandparents, you know, as an artist, these are real issues. You know, how can you be even a supportive family member, you know, and if you have such a hard time even for yourself, and it shouldn't be that way. But the work we see, we often had also Carol Martin with us. She, you know, writes about that kind of the theater of the real, the engagement with layers of reality, with you know, like Tina's work. You know, she collaged the FBI files and put it together. And Bonnie Maranka yesterday, who was with us, says, well, perhaps I am now thinking about the theater of the imagination, something that goes away actually from the representation of what is real. Or seems to be real. What do you all feel if you look around to your friends, colleagues? Will there be something emerging that is different? In East Berlin, they had tragedies in the time of Heiner Müller. He said, you know, tragedies are for dictatorships. Once the wall came down or opened up, he said, I'm not a comedy writer. I'm not really. So he stopped writing. You know, he said, I couldn't really adapt for it anymore. What do you think? What do you pick up from your colleagues or friends? What do you feel is or will be important or audiences would like to see?
Something that I've been thinking a lot about that I find in others' work that's really exciting to me is, and I think it's happening more and more after, you know, the past few years and this real grappling with reality. I like seeing work that has a sense of possibility that isn't really connected to utopia. And I think that that's maybe even controversial to say now. It was a very big, like especially like a very big queer locus for many years in the New York performance scene. I'm of course thinking about Jose Munoz, who's a brilliant thinker. But I think that, and you know, in other parts of his work, he also sort of touches on this. But I think that what is really the most interesting is when people are trying to rework the material that we have to live with, that are kind of contending with the things that we can't escape, accepting that the systems are always going to be a burden on us, and not from a place of antagonism, but from a place of making do, of coping with these things, of rewiring these things, and sort of like finding new ways of looking at them that don't get so far beyond the material or beyond this actual space, that have a little bit more of a sense of grounding. And I think that can still be in abstraction. I think that can still be in really exciting kind of indulgent forms in a lot of ways. But I think that what's most exciting is having some kind of almost like a sense of humility and thinking about these like big ideas. Like you can, like, I get the most impacted when something is like extremely poetic, but also is affecting and like relatable in some way where I have to take a moment to like kind of process the sadness that comes with it as well.
I have been noticing a lot of work being made with improvisation and pleasure as a guiding principle, and I'm really delighted and curious about like sort of reading what those trends in a way, like very recent. I mean, I'm talking in the past few months, I've just been like noticing people talking about their work that way. Like the improvisatory nature seems to me to be about a kind of inability in this moment to set things when things have been so tumultuous from one week and 1 month to the next. Like it actually seems illogical to set something that, based on the experience of the past 2 years, might have to be totally reworked. And so it's almost like coming out of that, I see a lot of my peers and colleagues and people whose work I love, like sort of offering, well, what we do have is like pleasure and delight in the body, and that as the thing to be followed and welcomed and celebrated. And like when we are in shared physical space together, how like delicious and lush that is. And so curiously, I've like not been seeing that much of like an impulse to sort of like deal with what we all went through / are still going through, but rather like when we're in space together, how strange and how joyous and how odd that can be. And I'm curious. I think when we like pass through to somewhere, which may never happen, there might actually be more space for processing. And we're so in the middle of like understanding ourselves and our bodies in relation to each other and each other's bodies and like breath and gaze and all these things, that it's kind of like in that realm of just delight in having a body or something. So yeah, I'm really, really curious to see how it feels. Very different, for instance, than like work during Trump, let's say, or like it, like I hear what you're all saying in terms of a kind of like imaginative desire, but reached through simply sharing space together.
And I think with that, there's a messiness in a way that we're allowing artists and ourselves, where like the awkwardness of being in space is very messy all of a sudden. The breath of somebody next to you is leaky in a way that it wasn't before. And I think I think of Godard as a filmmaker who didn't make films that had such a clean narrative arc. You were kind of just rolling with the sequence, and there was like also a messiness with that where you may not have known where you were going. And I'm looking at artists and looking at work, and especially live work, that does that, where it's confusing or it doesn't have such a clean bow. And I think that also can take the work outside of the realm of entertainment. Like I think so much of live work in the mainstream space is understood as live work for entertainment. Even music sometimes is looked at as entertainment or a backdrop. And so I'm interested when the mess or that sort of openness can free work from that pressure of feeling like entertainment, and instead it's this this active process of you kind of not even knowing where you're going, or not knowing that it may end in this way you expect it, or it may never end. It can live on in you kind of after.
Jesse, everything you just said kind of describes Sibyl's piece that I picked for as my thing about the messiness, because it's incredibly messy, but not in a I don't know. I encourage you to Sybil, when's your thing? Friday?
Tomorrow, right?
Okay.
At 7.
Yeah,
We're only
yeah.
showing a couple scenes, but you could stream it from Abrams and see the whole thing after November 4th.
But it's totally like, where is this going? Everything you just said, I was like, it's so. I encourage you to tune in, because if that's the work you like, you'll totally groove on.
I will. I can't wait.
It's a mess.
What about you? Yeah.
Well, you know, I really think about geography right now. I think partly because I'm not living in the city anymore, and it's not that far away, but it's also a million miles away at the same time. And when we were making this piece that I'm going to be shown tomorrow night, we had one performer in New Orleans. Our composer was in Austin. We had performers from Brooklyn. I was up here. I had another performer across the river. So we were kind of all over the place the whole time. And we were able to do it thanks to the internet and just sort of put it together. And man, we really use that internet. And then I think about when the lockdown first happened, and I've been moving around, sort of like squatting in different friends' houses the whole time. All my stuff is in storage. It's been a little bit insane. And when the lockdown first happened, I was staying in the empty home of a friend who lives even further upstate, and on a hill. And you know, and I remember this about September 11th too. Like, how far is this going to go? You know, is everything going to shut down? Are we going down? Are we becoming extinct even? And so I had this moment where I was like, what if I have to do all the performance that I'm going to do, like on this road that goes up this hill, where there's 4 residents on this road, and one of them has a Trump flag in their yard, and another one is like, I don't know what's going on with them, but they're a very troubled couple. And then there's the ACLU lawyers up the street, and then the, you know, stock traders, I guess. You know, what if these 4 people were my audience, and I had to, you know, does that change my work? What would my work look like? And I actually don't think it would change that much, weirdly, but the way that I would do it would change. And so I don't know if this question is like about the whole thing or just about our work individually, but I think the subject matter of my work, I don't think would change very much, but the delivery system would have to change it, and that would be quite radical of a change, and would say a lot about it. But it would definitely probably still be very messy, but thinking about geography, spanning geography, and then like rooting down into one very small geography. Either one or the other, it seems to me, are the possibilities that are compelling me at the moment.
Yeah, I guess 2 things are coming to mind for me based on some things you said, Jesse and Sibyl and Isaac, like geography maybe in relation to utopia, which like famously means no place, nowhere, and how that like collision or contradiction feels like a place I want to be inside of as a world. Like, what is a world that is no world? Which makes me think of apocalypse and like the apocalyptic moment or the sense of end times as a generative space to be in. So like end of the world is possibility of worlds or possibility of something beyond world. And also, Jesse, the messiness, which I really relate to and cherish and love in your work, Sibyl, it makes me think of messianic, like the messiness inside a messianic impulse. Messianism as like, for me as a Jew, is like helpful way to frame like utopia in terms of a thing that will never come. Like Moshiach is that which will not come to save us. Yet we must continue doing everything we can to bring about his arrival, but he's not going to come. Because then we'd be Christian, you know what I mean? Like devotion to the unarrival of the Messiah, even though all we want is his arrival. And so in like thinking about no place and utopia, I don't know, that just like I was feeling this excitement hearing all of you talk, like yes, to be in the place that is no place, or to be desiring and moving towards a place that is not there and that is nowhere, and like embracing the contradiction and how that feels, and that we're like never going to get there and we have to keep trying to get there, and maybe there is like really brief moments and like shards. Yeah, it's very exciting to.
Yeah, it's like a true contradiction. Like there's always, when you have a contradiction like that, it feels to me like there's always a lot of truth there, and like we are devoted to what is impossible, and that's always been true. But it really now, it seems to me like it's becoming like a mark, like real mark making. Like we have this moment, like we could be, it could still be over, for us. So what are we going to do in the meantime? Like, what are we here for in the meantime?
Alessandra and Lumi, both of you, what do you pick up as signals? You have your ear close to the landscape, and what would you guys like to see?
I mean, I don't know. I actually don't know what I'd like to see, but just like picking up, or just like continuing this conversation a little bit, it just reminds me of a lot of conversations I had at like the beginning of the pandemic, or I don't know, middle of the pandemic, or sometime when we thought there was going to be a very finite period, like that there was strict beginning and end. And artists were like, I'm never going to make work about COVID, or I never want to see work about COVID. And I think that we're all in a state now of like exactly what Alex was saying, like we're never going to arrive at this like end, so that the impact of this moment is like felt through all these different ways, and the work is never going to be like about COVID, like it's never going to be like a narrative about the virus, but it has deeply, of course, shaped everything that we've done, all the approaches to everything that we do. This idea of like, not being able to fix anything because everything might change in the next, 24 or 40 hours or whatnot, so that like, it's not just artists that are capable of kind of thinking like that, but like making sure that like our infrastructures around that are also kind of aligned with that thinking.
Yeah, that's a great response. I feel sort of similarly. I think a lot of the work being created right now is almost a continuation of conversations that were happening before the pandemic that are just like amplified. So again, it's not necessarily about COVID, but artists are like continuing these really important themes that they have been working through related to like race or equity or accessibility or sustainability, like these very heavy topics. So for me, it's been like a continuation or heightening of some of these ideas. And Jesse, I love what you said too about sort of the messiness. And I think there's this embrace of not showing work also that's completely polished or finished. And I think it is really a testament to this moment that we're in, like taking the time to slow down and not being so precious about the work and who it's shown to. And I think I really appreciated that as a curator. Like, I went to a performance this past Sunday as part of Performa and found myself on the beach at the Rockaways. And I think there's something beautiful about also taking work outside of the theatrical black box space and into this known, Sybil, like what you were saying, into the natural environment and sort of leaning into this idea of chance and surroundings. And so that's something I've really appreciated over the past few months, just seeing work again and experiencing things outside of like the black box space.
Yeah, I mean, some people do refer to that time we're in as a kind of apocalyptic, but in a sense of the word that means unveiling. It didn't always mean disaster. It was actually the unveiling of a truth, like apo is taking away and calypsis is like a the taking away of a shell or something. And that's what it did. It exposed real structures. We see how our institutions naked in a way. It's scary. I think Richard Schechner said it's like a nuclear reactor burst, and we look inside it. We are on top of it. And the big question, of course, is where will it be going? And yesterday, N. Catania said, theater people, performance people have been on the outside always. They are outsiders. Nobody wants them. Till 100 years ago, they wouldn't get buried and married, even in New York City. There's that little church, on 29th Street. They were nice to them. She said, it's what we always have been. And perhaps we have to go back to apprenticeship systems, like companies, artists will take people on. We have to say goodbye to the universities who charge you $80,000. You go into debt already when you start. How can you do an experimental artist when you have so much debt to carry with you? So perhaps this naked truth, where she says Shakespeare's work was actually outside the city of London, next to bear fights and dog fights. And even now people say, you teach Shakespeare, it's a microaggression. In some universities, they say, we can't teach it anymore. It's incredible what is happening at this moment. But the question is, will that be, again, that this outside status, also what Jay says, he feels a little bit at the university, you as the artists feel, and perhaps, also you as curators, where the question is, where will we go? But what will be presented for a city to celebrate life, to experience art? What will work? And there will be stuff shown, there will be stuff done. And I think you all make a big a contribution. But do you think it will lead to kind of the Obamacare, that people will be embracing the arts more, or will it be more they say, no, you're the outcast actually, and we don't care, you can be in your wagon and go through and perform in cities, which some people I think have done.
But how fun. I mean, what a beautiful image. Like, that's the lineage, that's what I feel like I come from as a performer, is like being the outcast and traveling around in my wagon with my hand out, and that's like the issues that I'm still grappling with. And of course, like the work of performance, and I'm speaking now as a clown primarily, is to like charm the audience or entertain them such that they are open to receiving ideas that they may have thought they were not open to. And so being an outcast is sort of the best way to sneak in, because you're outside and you're able to observe. And you kind of have like the space and the chance to observe and to formulate your critique and to formulate your mockery, which is the classic tale of the Buffon, for instance, that I return to again and again, that the people who were forced to live out in the swamp. Well, great. So now they have lots of like time to hang out in the swamp, and they can watch the elites of the kingdom at a safe distance and really like hone their criticism of the way society is structured. And when they're invited in, it's kind of the job to to entertain enough to get your food and your drink for dinner. And allow people to laugh instead of kill you. And then maybe after the performance is over, some of the ideas linger and linger and linger. And then the king and everybody goes to bed, and right before they go to bed, they all kill themselves because suddenly like it hit them what the Buffon was saying. So yeah, I feel like that's actually maybe a more appealing model to me than supposed embrace, which actually functions as neutering or something like that, like a kind of being couched in resources and institutional embrace, which I'm like always slightly skeptical of, because who's behind the money, and why are they being so supportive? So it's like, this weekend I went to like an experimental clown party that it turned out was funded by Peter Thiel. So like, he has reasons, right? People with money have their reasons, and I think that's important to have like a certain skepticism about the caring embrace that it has mysterious where the king is kind of hiding, let's say.
I mean, I can add to that, Alex, and I'm gonna echo something that and a colleague who I met recently who is a legal representative and a member of the Shinnecock community on Long Island. They started their career working in cultural institutions, and they've since sort of left, and they're now really a lawyer and representing this community and suing the government and all of that stuff, but they still keep a foot in the door in all of these cultural institutions where they worked. And if you go to an event where they're at, they're always asking questions. And it's because they realized, and they told me, that people come to art events and cultural organizations, and while there's a lot of problems with them, this is one of their powers, is that they come disarmed. And they come ready to almost listen to the artist, right? They're willing to be fed whatever an artist will give them. And there's so much power in that vulnerability of an audience. And I think, as you're saying, Alex, to continue to kind of really work that delicate space and sort of even expand on that and amplify that more intensely so that at the end of the night, they're shook awake or shook to death, is really, that's a goal, right? It's something I can certainly lead into.
Yeah, I know it's such a big theme. We are coming also closer to the end, and I think we're asking questions, and we should actually have better questions. We won't find answers, and that's what artists should do, to ask problems actually and not solve them. I feel very strongly that this is a time, and perhaps it has to become a bit more militant with lawsuits. Perhaps lots of people talk about strikes. That people should just say, no, this is not the way it works. We need to be paid. We shouldn't be just adjuncts. We shouldn't, get tiny honorariums. Meanwhile, leaders of big institutions, make it 30 times as much as someone on a low level in that same institution. That's wrong. So we'll see where this all will be going, and I hope that our little festival is a contribution towards it. Tonight we have at 4:30, I said, in the afternoon, the Indigenous Theater panel. We listen to that community that's really overlooked. That said, we often go out also on the Black Lives Matter and Latino for everything. Very few come to our events, to our things. And we were there before, also before slavery, and that shouldn't be compared. But there is an important to listen to it. Of course, tonight we have Alex, tomorrow Sibyl. Tomorrow we will hear from the 5 at 12 noon of the 5 cities, New Orleans, Austin, and Cincinnati, and Detroit, and Philadelphia. We are very proud that we were able to put that together here. How does it feel for them? And they are perhaps as close and as far as Sibyl at the moment, on the internet. And since we don't do live shows, we thought we bring them together to hear what they will be doing. And Friday is our open, small discussion we are thinking about to create in the summer of 2023, something like a citywide festival celebration in parks outside with existing institutions in all 5 boroughs. Who knows if it will work or not? I hope you can be part of it. But to seriously think, what does a city really need? What does it listen to people who are on the CUNY theaters, which are public theaters in the way, but they're underfunded and they don't get noticed. But how could they help the community? How can the cultural international institutions, the Goethe Institutes and the French and everybody, and the Finnish, Norwegian, Italians, bring in a global consciousness that is missing, as Jay pointed out. Where will this be going all? And then also with some of our curators and others to really think, how could that look like? We don't know if it's going to work. It's also an experiment. It might fail, but we think it's worth it. And but we can, with little resources, as with this festival, I think we can ask questions. I really, really want to thank you all for being with us. And I know a panel with 7 people is some people might even take it as an insult to even participate. But I think that spirit, which also you all talked about, Alessandra and Jay, Lumi and others, to collaborate, to be together, to listen to each other, even if it's difficult, and to hold that space of antagonism, of complications, things they will never be able to solve. Bertolt Brecht, the great writer, said, you should be able to think in controversies or things that cannot be resolved. Actually, if you think it's black and white, right and wrong, you are small-minded. You have to live in contradiction. You have to accept it. And like democracy, that's never there, but we have to go to it, and we have to work for it. And the same is perhaps with this utopia. And I think art has to make a statement. I think it's really the art that can save a city, unite people, bring peoples together. The Columbine shooting, as someone said yesterday, that wouldn't have happened if the school district hadn't eliminated art education in the schools. There, whoever did it might have said, "Oh, there are films and things and other stuff outside my tiny universe. I don't have to kill myself and everybody." So I think this is the hope. It's a very dangerous time, I feel. It's also a time where perhaps, the ghost of fascism appeared for the first time in America, and the arts have to come out and have to do something. And you all are such great workers and agents of change. And so you have our highest respect, and we really are very thankful that you participate. And I hope you also feel that this festival is a celebration of you, your work as curators, as editors, as producers, as artists, singers, dancers, performers, in whatever form, musicians it is. So thank you all, and thanks to HowlRound. That is so fantastic that they host that. It's nationally streamed. We had listeners from over 25 countries. People want to know what's going on in America. What are artists thinking in New York? What are curators thinking? So it's stunning that we have such a big reach, which we normally couldn't do it in our space were open. And I would like to thank Andy Lerner and Tanvi Shah, who put this all together, Gurav and the Cactus Juice company in Mumbai, who made this possible. It's incredible. Came off our 24-hour talk we did with Indian artists. So we are very thankful, but it's also, we are very concerned. And this is all very serious, what we talk about. This is a future of our lives, of the city. And I think art has to take a stand, and you all do. And we have to investigate how we can do that in a meaningful way, where we also include everybody and keep the community, the environment, everything in mind. So thank you all. Sorry about my little preachy thing. It's my last talk after the threes. Tomorrow, Jake will put this together with the companies he selected. And I hope to see you all again. And we are trying to get together a prelude party. It might take a week or 2 or 3, but I hope to see you all in person, and we get a DJ and celebrate and dance, hopefully. So thank you all. Goodbye. And see you soon. And tonight I'm going to come and see Lumi and Alex. I can't wait. One of the few new things to see. Bye-bye.